Still a few people joining us. Just give it a minute or two and then we'll kick off. Okay, I think we'll just start on time because we've got a lot to get through. I think there's still a few people coming in, but they can join us as they see fit. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming along to today's webinar on digital strategy and Microsoft. For those of you that don't know me already, my name's Gary Dixon and I'm the Digital and Design Manager at SFHA. Today on this, what I'm going to call very, very wet and windy day, I'm delighted that we've got some speakers from TSG, who are an SFHA partner. We've got Tony Hughes, who's a Microsoft Solution Strategist, and Roz, who's a Customer Success Manager at TSG. So the agenda for today, the session will be roughly an hour long, depending on the amount of Q&A. I've already seen the presentation the guys are going to be sharing, so there's lots of stuff in there, and I'm really keen that they've got enough time for us to really dig into it and have that time at the end for anyone that's got any questions that they want to ask. So I'm hoping this will be the start of a few sessions that we'll try and run to really try and drive forward a bit of catalyst for new ideas that you can take back to your organisation within that IT and digital space. Before I pass over to our speakers today, I've just got a few bits of housekeeping. When you join the session, you will be muted, and during the presentation, if you have any questions, just please type them into the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on them, and when there's a kind of appropriate moment, I'll try and jump in to just quiz Tony or Roz on what's been asked. At the end, during the Q&A, if you would like to speak, you can use the raise hand option, and if you're up for it, please jump on screen and you can ask the question yourself. We hope that you will be comfortable having your video enabled. It's just great to see everyone's faces, but you can turn it off if you're not want to have yourself on screen. We will be recording this part of the presentation just so we can send it out to everyone afterwards and for anyone that's managed to miss it, but we will not be recording the Q&A part of the session. And we will, of course, be sharing the presentation from the guys at TSG in the post email too. So that's everything from me. And just again, thanks for joining us. And I'll just hand you over to Tony and Roz.
Thanks, Gary. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. For people who have been on my presentations, it'll probably go wrong somewhere, but we do try and keep them light-hearted as well. And please do ask questions. You do want to listen to me all for the next hour, and I certainly do want to listen to myself for the next hour as well. So what I'm going to do shortly, I'm just going to share my screen, take you through a presentation. We've got some live demo as well to show some of the technologies which we'll be talking about. So I hope you find the session useful. Right, so here's first technical challenge is to share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see that okay?
Can see that perfectly, Tony. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So like Gary said, I'm joined by Roz, who's one of our customer success managers in the housing team. Kirsty was going to be joining us, but unfortunately, Kirsty seems to have Delhi belly this week. So I got a message at 5:30 this morning saying, I'm trying my best, but really I won't be with you today. So I'm going to be doing all bar one slide. And what I will say at this point is my My background is predominantly applications, and there are a few slides on infrastructure and things like that. So I just beg of you not to ask any really difficult questions on there on those slides. If I can't answer them, then we'll certainly come back to them. After the session. So this presentation is basically a digital strategy, a journey to the cloud. Gary's gone through a bit of the etiquette there. So if you want to use hand raising or post comments and questions in the team chat, please do so. Be aware I cannot see any of that going on in the background. So if you think I'm ignoring you, I'm not. It's Gary who's ignoring you. So so today's agenda, what we're going to do is give you a bit of a background on TSG and our involvement in the social housing sector. The approach we take to IT and technology in the sector. Some thoughts on what we see going on. And then we're going to demonstrate some software. Roz is going to talk to you about funding, which is available in Scotland. Roz has got a long and illustrious background in the provision of funding and working with funding providers. So if you don't get anything out of my side of it, you might just get some free funding from Roz. So bear with us all the way through. So this slide really is just to give you an idea of some of the associations which we work with. We work right across the UK. So not only Scotland, there's England and Wales as well. And we work across all sizes. So we're quite happy to work with, a large housing association like, Riverside or One Housing, or the smaller ones like Prospect, in Edinburgh, and the like. So we don't, we think everybody can benefit from modern technologies. And it's a really important part of the business. We try to drive efficiencies within the organization to give you more time and money and effort to actually, do what we're all trying to do, which is improve the lives of people and families, etc. So a little bit about our story. You can see there's a big gap in the first two, and there's a reason for that. I'll explain it when we come to dates. And we were founded way back in 2003 by who is now Sir Graham Wiley, who was one of the founders of Sage Software. He founded us back in 2003 with the vision of providing of building a nationwide IT organization which provided everything from infrastructure to applications to managed services, etc. And that was done predominantly through acquisition. Over a period of time, we acquired and tried to merge together 30 organizations, which was something of a challenge. But eventually we got there. It had its pains, etc. Especially when you've got, 30 finance directors, 30 finance systems, 30 CRM systems. It takes time to pull them all together. And during that period of time, we worked with multiple sectors. So whether it was social housing, which predominantly in those first sort of 10 years was through the provision of support services, not necessarily applications and innovation. Manufacturing, local authorities, etc., etc. But then I guess our first sort of major foray into social housing from an application perspective was back in 2014 when we won a significant contract with Home Group based in Newcastle. And that contract was predominantly, it had multiple suppliers. They were replacing their housing management system with Oracle, which was done by Fujitsu. And then they were modernizing their whole IT infrastructure based around Microsoft and what was then Office 365. So we had another local IT company in Newcastle who did all the infrastructure and the data services, and we did all what we would call the productivity. So we built them a SharePoint-based intranet. We built them a document management system. We helped them implement what was, then Microsoft CRM for their service provision, etc., etc. that project sort of was successful. And then really in 2016, I think like a lot of IT organizations, it wasn't just going to be, the latest versions of Word and Excel and email in the cloud. It was going to be sort of much, much more than that. And in 2018, we attended our first housing technology show, the one run by George Grant down in the Midlands. We were quite nervous because we didn't know what we were going to find and things like that. He is a non-housing provider, coming to the biggest technology show. And we really, what we wanted to get across to the sector was exactly what I just mentioned there. 365 is not just the email in the cloud and the latest versions of Word and Excel. And we were like hugely surprised and sort of grateful that when we did our presentation, it was sort of standing room only. And we were showing things we'd been deploying outside of housing to IT directors and digital managers and program leaders, and they were going, wow, we didn't realize SharePoint could do that, or wow, we didn't realize this could do that. And we were frankly inundated with inquiries afterwards. And that spurned into basically us working with a number of housing associations to build, I would say, what was our first real offering of applications into the sector, which was a SharePoint-based document management system, which has been very successful in the meantime. And then in 2020, what we didn't see coming over the hill was a pandemic, and really that sort of brought a lot of housing associations to say, well, normally if I was going to roll out Teams to the organization, it would be 6 months, but I need to do it in 6 days. And we were helping them as much as we could. And all of a sudden, people were starting to get used to using Teams. They were starting to get used to using Teams telephony. They were coming to us and saying, we've got this new working way. We need an intranet. We need document management. And the whole thing just grew and grew and grew, which was great, And then we saw all these different features coming into 365, like, Dataverse and Syntax and AI Builder, which was bringing technology businesses of of your size and our size could really never think to be able to utilize at a relatively low cost, is reading invoices dynamically with AI Builder, extracting data and then integrating that data into the housing management system. And these projects were not 100 days, they were sort of a 10-day project and things like that, really bringing all of this high-end technology to the general user, and then sort of we then decided, we wanted to build a proper partnership program with our clients in the sector, and bring in additional services like training services and cybersecurity and things like that, and also, we were challenging ourselves to think, why are we building the same solution 10 times for different organizations? Let's try and standardize and let's try and get cooperatives going so that people could, and I'll talk about this a wee bit later about, shared costs and things like that. So that's just a sort of brief history. And I guess, what is our approach? Well, we, as a Microsoft provider, we advocate at TSG, a Microsoft first approach, but with caveats in it, So we say to organizations, if we're going to have a hybrid working, want to be more flexible and we want to be able to scale up and down and things like that and expand at our own pace, is start looking at, and we're getting, more and more inquiries around housing associations wanting to move away from all of this on-premise infrastructure and legacy solutions and start to move into the Microsoft cloud. So that's things like, using Microsoft Azure infrastructure, using Azure virtual machines rather than Citrix and things like that, putting databases into into Azure, where we can consolidate from multiple applications and start to get some real-time reporting and things like that. And app services which allow us to build applications and things like if people still want to have traditional network file shares, well, we can still do that in Azure using things like Azure Files. And then we always get challenged about, is Dynamics a platform for a housing management solution? Well, we say no to that, and not no because we can't do it. Technically, TSG could build a housing management solution on Dynamics 365. We have the technical resources, and we can back that up by the fact that we actually provide software to the majority of the train operators in the UK, which process all of the delay repair claims from travellers based on Dynamics 365. But we hear too many scare stories about people who've tried to build a housing management solution on Dynamics and sadly have failed at large expense and time. So we're not, we're not going to be part of that. But what we are part of is saying Microsoft can wrap around a traditional housing management solution, right? So let the housing management solution do what it's really, really good at and wrap around Microsoft applications to complement it. Okay, so things like Dataverse, and I'll show you an example of a Dataverse application later on. Dataverse is basically Dynamics, but with no front end to it. There's all of the business rules, there's all the logic, there's all the database information and everything like that. But what you do is you build your required solution on top of it. So we're using Dataverse to build stock condition report applications. We're using Dataverse for organizations to manage their Life 24 care services. You would never really expect a housing management system to be able to do something like that. So let's build it around, but integrate the data. If you want to have a lookup of properties from inside Dataverse, we can do that dynamically to the housing management system or asset management system or whatever. And it allows us to build different interfaces. Of what we call a model-driven app is generally for desktop use. A Canvas app is for mobile use. These apps can be offline capable as well, give you all the flexibility, the device agnostic, etc., etc. And then we've got things like Power Automate to give us workflow capabilities, artificial intelligence, like I mentioned earlier about reading invoice or reading EPCs or electrical certification to extract, a list of actions and recommendations. RPA to do robotic process automation, so we can integrate with legacy systems and update them using RPA. Obviously, we've got Power BI for analytics, but things like customer voice. Microsoft Customer Voice is a survey application where we've now got housing associations using that to do their, post-repair surveys and tenant satisfaction, etc. Functionality which people would not think Microsoft would have in their bag, but they do. And things like our document management system based on SharePoint, intranets based on SharePoint. The governance and compliance which comes off that. What we say to people is really the more you put into the cloud, the more compliant you can be, because we can integrate all of these solutions with your data loss prevention policies, with your retention policies for documents, etc., etc. Okay, and we listen to our clients as well. We have coming up shortly a lighter version of our document management solution, which is more akin to the smaller housing association, who doesn't really need maybe the tight integration into all their line of business systems. And then we provide managed services as well. So if you want to have a journey to the cloud, we can take you on that journey. And we're doing that with more and more housing associations now, being quite successful in a number of tenders where we're actually using all the experience we've got from working outside of the sector and bringing some of the best practice inside the sector, from private, from public, etc. Okay, and things like training services and the hot topic probably for the last 2 or 3 years around cyber security. We have a security practice where we can advise and, we can help people achieve cyber essentials and things like that. So our approach, one thing is we get the sector, we work in it all the time. Our housing team is dedicated to the social housing sector, so we're not spending 50% of our time in manufacturing or education or anything like that. We're purely focused on the sector. So, to help share knowledge, and not just knowledge from TSG, but knowledge from clients, we host regular lunch and learn events where we may showcase some new technology, or what we love to do is have one of our clients showcase a project we've done for them. So whether that is using customer voice for tenant satisfaction, or whether it's showing an intranet we've built for them, or whether it's showing applications. We're always open to research and provide advice on new technologies. So one of the things about my job, and I think I've got one of the best jobs in the world, is that I get to play with software a lot. So if somebody, one of our clients come to us with an issue, I can take that away. I can do the research on the suitability of products and applications, so to prevent you going down a blind alley, or wasting a lot of time and effort to do that. We have a housing teams site which we host, which is non-sales, and that's got over 250 people from the sector who have access, who can ask questions. They can ask questions of TSG or their peers, or share ideas, etc., etc. And we want to work with the sector. My background is document management over many years, but I didn't know about things like mutual exchanges and things like that, which is common in the sector when we first started building our EDRM. This has all come from our clients advising what the system needs to do, what best practices, etc., etc., and we listen and we integrate those solutions. We, like you say at the bottom here, we develop specific applications. So one of the things we're going to show you is an example is a voids inspection app we built for Hanover. Just using Microsoft technology, and we're really proud that a high percentage of our projects we deliver on value. So you're on budget, and we do them on time. We're not a type of organization who goes in low and then adds loads of change requests and things like that. We want to give you a budget which we can all work to, and we're not adverse to upskilling your teams, giving knowledge transfer, working in partnership. So some of our most successful projects and clients are where we have that true partnership. We will QA their work, we will provide advice, they will then go away and undertake it, but we're always here, as required. We try to be innovative, but we're always working within best practice. One of the great things about Microsoft Cloud is that if we do our job right, anything we build, all of the upgrade responsibility sits with Microsoft. If we work within their guidelines, our applications will continue to run as they update Microsoft Office. Okay, so we don't get the situation where a legacy system is preventing an upgrade of another system because it'll only run on server 2012 and things like that. And we're happy to work with partners. We have working relationships with Capita, with Arian, with Civica, and other providers like HallNet and people like that. We're not just TSG. We want to work with these other providers to provide integrations. So why should you consider change? Well, technology is constantly evolving. Even we can't keep up with it at TSG. Sometimes we're halfway through a project and Microsoft will release something. We'll go, damn. If we'd known about that 6 weeks ago, we'd have probably taken a different tack. So it does have its ups and its downs, but generally, it's all positive. Reduction in risk. This is my opinion. I think the cloud is more secure than on-premise infrastructure. I think cyber attacks are less likely, etc. Costs, I feel, can be more predictable as well. We know what our subscriptions are. Yes, Microsoft can put them up and put them down, etc., etc. But generally, we can plan ahead and we can budget. Microsoft plows so much money and resources, into constantly improving these applications and adding new features that, no sort of legacy provider could really ever align themselves to providing the same sort of innovation. And I think what's important as well is a lot of this is about people and processes. People have to be willing to adapt to a new flexible working environment. They have to be willing to adapt to change, and that, we do provide change management services as well. Because that often is a major part of the implementation, is ensuring that the users feel engaged, they're on board. You've got the backing from senior management, etc. This is where I ask that nobody asks any questions which are highly technical. These are just 4 ways about possible options about moving to the cloud if you've got on-premise services. The bottom right, Azure IaaS, is basically a lift and shift, where maybe you've got legacy applications which require to run on, in effect, older type physical servers and things like that. Then we can just migrate those into infrastructure as a service. Okay, then you've got 2 options above. The top left is really pure software as a service, where you're implementing, you're subscribing to applications which are pure cloud services. So Office 365 is one, Dynamics, the Power Platform, and other line of business applications. They could be, Capita One in the cloud. It could be Civica CX in the cloud. The top right one is where if you want to be really innovative, is where you start actually, building your own applications in Azure. So building solutions which sit purely and simply in Azure. That's a development environment. Web apps, Azure SQL, logic apps, and things like that. Yeah.
Tony, I know you said that not to ask any questions, but I'm going to ask a question anyway.
Go on.
I was just wondering, just from kind of recent kind of work you've been doing, is it predominantly a shift to that SaaS setup that you've seen from other clients? Is there any kind of trends there that or have you seen more clients going towards the Azure side of things?
Your smaller clients are more your SaaS.
Yep.
Right. Your larger organizations who are maybe more complex, provide multiple services, and want to have more point solutions, they might move towards a platform as a service. But that, I would say, that is less the norm. It's more from the SaaS side of things. Okay.
That's great.
And then what we do as well, if we can take you through what we call a cloud adoption framework, right, which is basically where we plan out your entire journey from, your current state into a cloud state. So defining the overall strategy, okay, the business case, looking at the costs involved, etc., etc. Define that plan in detail. A readiness phase where you're actually building the Azure elements, we call them landing zones, and then migrating across. And then looking at, how we govern that and how we manage it going forward. So that's a fairly defined program. It's based upon Microsoft best practice. This is where we would love to have had one of our infrastructure guys on who could talk about this for hours, but they would talk about it for hours. But it's something which requires a lot of thought. It requires a lot of time, and it has to be done right, So I guess, how do you benefit through going down a cloud adoption program is your environment is very flexible. You can expand storage, you can move storage around, you can add applications, etc. You've got the scalability to expand or shrink, so it's easy to add users. If you want to remove certain services or users, or you have reductions, then you can do that. Like we mentioned earlier, we think it gives you more predictable costs as well. You're not all of a sudden thinking, oh, I've got to upgrade all of these servers from 2018 to 2020 and things like that, which are quite, can be quite expensive projects. You have an evergreen environment. Microsoft, highly unlikely that they would ever go bust or anything like that. It's always on. They've got massive backup. You can't guarantee, that there might be failures from time to time. I think Microsoft Teams over the last 2 weeks has been a bit flaky. I don't know what's happened in the background, but we have had some oddities where, people sort of, it's not their camera's not working, but Microsoft hasn't been streaming the video unless you turn it on and turn it off, or leave a meeting and rejoin it and things like that. But generally, it's 24/7, 365. It is a stable and robust platform, and I think the key thing here is a platform to build on. There are applications out there which allow you to either contract companies like TSG to build a specific solution, and that could be anything from a desk booking application for your employees. It could be an expenses application. It could be HR processes, authorization to recruit, and things like that. The Power Platform can provide all of that functionality. Okay. And like I say, it reduces large scale technical projects, reducing time and cost. Yep. So enough of me talking about and going through slides. I want to show you some applications now. The first one I'm going to show you is an application and I'm going to use the term worked with Grand Union for their Life 24 provision. They had built about 11 years ago an application which was only meant to be in place for 6 months. And last year they came to us and said, we really do need to get rid of this. It's a security issue. It's running on an old version of the server, and we just really need to get rid of it. So they had been looking for an application to test on Dataverse. So we work with them and built with them the Life 24 solution, which has what we call a desktop interface, which is for the administrators, the managers of the Life 24 service they provide, and a mobile app which is designed for the people out in the field installing bed sensors, replacing alarm systems for their sort of elderly clients, etc., etc. So this was all built on Microsoft Dataverse. Grand Union now enhance and manage that solution themselves. It's not IP to TSG. We built the solution on their environment. They've kindly allowed us to put it into our demo environment with dummy data, because it is a good example of what can be done. So the first thing I'll show you will be the desktop interface. So when I mentioned Dataverse earlier, we were talking about it's basically Dynamics, but with no front end, right? So you have all the tools behind, everything required to build an application. So somewhere to store the data in databases, business process via workflow, reporting if need be. You can tie Power BI onto it, Power BI to it, etc. And what we basically have, in order to manage the Life 24 solution, we have clients, right? So clients, basically people who use the services of Life 24. Okay, so this is a bit of CRM in effect type of functionality sitting inside Life 24. If all the clients were in another system, Dataverse allows you to dynamically connect to those applications, so we wouldn't have to recreate the data inside Dataverse. So where we did things like stock condition reports in Dataverse, the property lookup is just dynamic to the housing management system. Okay, so we've only got a single version of the truth when it comes to property listings and things like that. So if I look at a particular client, so here we have Austin Hughes, all the fields you define in the system, right? And there's no programming behind any of this. So all the files, all the fields, so telecare ID, phone numbers, date of birth, etc., etc. Okay. We also have preferred contact information. We have a timeline which fully integrates into Outlook, etc., etc. We can have more client details, related clients, so we can relate different entities to each other, right? We can look at the stock which is allocated against a particular client. So we can see that Austin's got an ADSL filter, a pendant, etc., etc. Okay, so all of that information we're just storing inside Dataverse and giving, your office-based or your laptop users a nice Microsoft sort of interface to it. So we have clients, and then we have equipment types. So we're doing a bit of stock management as well, as we're saying we have these equipment types available. Okay, and then what items we actually hold in stock. Okay, so we can manage that side of the business in this sort of dynamics type of interface. Okay, but don't just think about Life 24. Like I say, we're using this for stock condition reports as well. We could be using it for voids. We could be using it for specific point solutions, within your organization. Okay, so if I wanted to add a new stock item, then I can just say new. It's just the thing saying, right, what's a stock reference, equipment type, etc., etc. Okay, I can see previous allocations for stock items and things like that as well. So I can manage the data behind the system. Okay. From the other side, we have our mobile workers. So these are the guys out and the ladies who are actually installing and managing the equipment, inside people's houses. So what they wanted one is because it's Milton Keynes area, it's quite rural. All of this is offline capable. Okay. So what these operatives do in the morning, they will download postcode areas they're going to be working in. So that will download all the necessary data of the clients, etc., onto their devices, and they can then work on it offline. And then when they get back online, they can update data, etc., etc. What they used to do previously was spend an hour and a half in the morning manually gathering data and writing it down. They would go out and do the work. They would come back in the afternoon and then spend an hour updating the systems. We've given them back about 2.5 hours a day because it's all dynamic, it's all available offline, etc. Okay. So what they can do is load an area. Okay. They can say, right, I'm going to load that area. Yeah. And then they can start to look at the clients. Okay, so here's Austin Hughes, who we were looking at on the main desktop environment. I can search for clients just to show you some sort of the functionality, if we've got sort of hundreds of clients in there, etc. But then I can actually go to a particular client. I can see all the stock items they've got. All right, I can see any tasks which have been created against them. Okay, but what I can also do as well is I can say, right, okay, I'm going to take that item there and I'm going to return it. All right, on this date, I'm going to say return. That will then put that, when I submit it, that will then put it back into stock. Okay, so I could take another one there and say, actually, that one there, I'm going to dispose of it because it's broken. Okay, so I can manage. This is all done from a mobile phone. That's why it's in that sort of format. But then I might say, okay, I want to create a task. So here you got to come in and say, right, I need to create a task. I need it to be done by Friday. The subject is just a safety call. and just said, we had some concerns over balance or something like that, and say add action. So I can be working away all day, visiting multiple clients, updating information. And then at the end, I could come along and that's yellow, meaning that I've got one task and one allocation to update. Okay, so I can then hit submit. And then the system will then process that information. Okay. All right. So if I then go back into my desktop and I go to Austin Hughes, and hopefully what I should see, something might take a couple of seconds, there's that action which I just put in there, concerns over balance. So if you imagine I've got my field workers who are working on mobile phones offline and then submitting data back into the system. Okay. So that's just an example of some of these higher end Microsoft technologies and what you can do with them. Okay. I'm not saying everybody's got this because some of them are additional license costs. However, I hope you're seeing sort of the power of the Microsoft cloud it is just much more than, it is a lot more than sort of email in the cloud and the latest versions of sort of Word and Excel and that. So that was just one example. Another example, this is the Voids app we did for Hanover in Edinburgh. This is a much simpler app. It uses SharePoint list information to store the data. It's a Canvas app only, so it's only available on the mobile phone type of interface. But it provides, like I say, offline capability as well. So if I want to do a new void inspection, I can come in and here we've got a list of developments. So I could say, right, this is, TSG, close out Coppers Court, flat number 3. When was the inspection date? When did we receive the keys? We see we received them yesterday. The location of the keys was the housing office. Is there asbestos present? If I leave that as yes, and I say save and next, it's going to ask me questions about asbestos, right? If I say no, it'll take me straight into the void, right? So we can have quite sophisticated conditional sort of activities within these apps, okay? So then I can go into meter readings. So I can say, right, it's gas, location, cable wall, meter ID, 345, reading. I can take a picture if I want. So if I'm on my mobile phone, I click that button, it'll actually activate the camera and I can take a photo. And I can just say add meter. Who's your electricity supplier, British Gas, etc. Okay. Save and next. General cleanliness of the flat. Okay, so I can say, okay, it's good condition. It's spotless. No issues around water hygiene or anything like that. Save and next. And then I can start to go through rooms or externals. Okay, so I could straight away say, okay, I'm going into the hall. And we've got all these questions we have to answer about decoration, etc. If it's the sort of functionality you can build in, you see, if it's all generally satisfactory, rather than click through each one and say satisfactory, just click it for all. Okay, and then we can just move on to the next and go to the living room, do the same thing, go to the kitchen, go to the bathroom. Okay, so I want to do the bedroom. There's bedroom 1, satisfactory. We've got a second bedroom, bedroom 2, satisfactory. Okay. And then when we save that, we can submit it all back into SharePoint lists. And if we want to have Power Automate workflows picking up, this is unsatisfactory, the data to then email somebody to say, raise a job for the repairs, for a repair job or whatever, then that can be done as well. Okay. So those were just a couple of examples of, you know, what the Microsoft platform can do. Just a little bit about partnerships. I'm just a little bit concerned at time I've been sort of chatting too much. We're all about, you know, we want to work with you guys. We want to work either company to company or as a cooperative. You know, if a number of housing associations come to TSG and say, can we co-fund the building of a voids app or the building of something else, we're more than happy to do that. You know, we want to make it affordable for everybody to use these technologies. So thankfully, I'm going to pass you over to Roz now. It means I can have a drink of my water, and Roz can talk to you about funding.
Hi guys. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So I'm one of two dedicated housing customer success managers for TSG. Myself and Richard McGrath, who's also on this call, work with Tony and Kirsty within the housing sector team or housing sector vertical for TSG. And as Tony had touched on, we come with sector knowledge, insights into housing, clients, sector trends, technologies, user cases, etc. And we're dedicated completely to working with housing associations. As Tony said, we spend 100% of our time working with you guys in the sector, getting to know you, getting to know the trends that are out there, and look to give best advice and align that to, you know, your technology architecture, and also offering like a unique and bespoke customer first approach. Myself, I joined TSG in only July 2021, so just over a year ago, and I come from a long career with Investors in People Scotland, or formerly known as Remarkable, so I've come with a much more business consultancy background than I do tech. And have been able to work within the housing sector to bring, you know, more strategic and operational solutions, managing client stakeholder relationships, and then helping to embed more of a high performing culture within organisations as we work with them. And with my background with Investors in People, as has already been touched on, I come with a wealth of knowledge of understanding the Scottish funding landscape and have connections with partners and consultants in private, public, third sectors, which we feel is a great enabler to all, you know, all our TSG customers, not just our housing, but obviously housing's a brilliant way to start, and I can afford to bring that to you guys. So through that, we work with joint approach with connections with like Skill Development Scotland, Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Scottish Business Resilience Centre. I could go on and on and on. And I just wanted to touch on a couple with you today that, you know, and highlight them, but feel free to get in touch with me, drop me an email if you want to know any more, because there are over 1,400 different funding opportunities currently available in Scotland. I'm not sure how many people knew that, but it's an awful lot. And, you know, they consist of everything from grants, loans, other support, and they're all there to design to give a significant and sustainable lasting effect on the Scottish economy, you know, your business and your workforces. So it's highly important and imperative, if we want this funding to continue, that we all tap into it. And I like to think, and through Richard, we can act as an enabler to get you funding that you may be entitled to as businesses. One of the resources that I felt was really important to highlight, and you might have already seen it in Gary's email or Kirsty's email that have been sent out previously by the SFHA members list, is Skills for Growth. It's a really good resource opportunity and a brilliant starting point for organisations. It's delivered in partnership with Skills Development Scotland, or SDS, is well known up here in Scotland. It supports housing associations and companies with up to 250 employees. If you think, I'm just over 250 employees, don't fret. There is ways in working around that and working with organisations that are bigger and greater than, you know, 250 employees. It's a free service, fully funded, and it's a business consultancy service, and it helps you look at, you know, the ever-changing economic environment, delivering the right blend of skills and making sure they're in the right place, which is essential in this day and age. It also helps give a greater focus on innovation and productivity. And best of all, it helps open many doors and connections within Scotland, and also the unique funding landscape that we have too. The way that Richard and I are also looking to work with Skills Development Scotland and the Skills for Growth is then aligning that to your technology road mapping. So we can take on the back of your Skills for Growth audit, almost align a technology roadmap to that. So you've got where you're going with your employees, where you're going with your technology, and bring that together so you've got a working document, and that can go into, you know, your 3-year, your 4-year strategy planning. I can send out more information on the back of it, so I've popped my email address down there, so feel free to drop me an email if you want to. There's also lots of other funding opportunities that are currently live, like the Digital Boost, the Flexible Workforce Development Fund, which gives you money for training. If you're a levy paying organisation, you can get up to £15,000 worth of funding. If you're non-levy paying for the first time, they've actually opened it up to every organisation, so you can get up to £5,000 towards training. That can be utilised through likes of ourselves who deliver training, or even the colleges and universities in Scotland, to make sure that your workforce are being able to deliver what you need them to deliver. You've also got Connecting Scotland, Apprenticeship Fund, Local Business Bespoke Funds, and then the Investing in Enterprise Fund. I could sit here all afternoon and talk funding because there is so much of it, and it's quite sad that a lot of people don't actually know about it, so don't have access to it, and you know, don't have that enabler there as well. The other one that I was just going to point out to you just quickly before I shut up and be quiet and let Tony talk again, is a fund that's being run during Cyber Essentials Charity Week by IASME, which is the Information Assurance for Small and Medium Enterprise Consortium. If you're a registered charity, you can get funding during the 7th to the 18th, sorry, it's a fortnight actually, the 7th to the 18th of November this year, where they will fund a percentage towards your Cyber Essentials accreditation or certification. You must apply for the funding during the 7th to the 18th of November and start the process within a month, but you've got until next May to be able to utilise that to get your certification. And with, you know, cyber being such a big topic at the moment and a lot of housing associations needing it as part of their insurance, it's one worth looking into, and I'll make sure that the link to that funding opportunity is shared with you all as well. And thank you.
Thanks, Roz. I didn't know there was that much funding available. So, right, sorry, let's just couple of things on here before we go to Q&A, which I hope there are some questions. If anyone wants to see a more in-depth sort of overview of the technologies we've talked about today, we're more than happy to arrange one-to-one art of the possible sessions, you know, either face-to-face or over Teams. You know, I'm fed up with sort of sitting in offices for the last 2.5 years and desperate to get out and about. And any other sort of themes you want to discuss at the end of the day. So so I guess we'll sort of open the floor now to hopefully a few questions. So she'll stop sharing my screen.